I'm Aniello Piro, and the Denver Broncos have their biggest test of the season coming up on Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm Cody Roark. Bo Nix has a chance to change the narrative this week if the Broncos offense can get off to a hot start against the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm Nick Ferguson, and will the Broncos have to lean on MacGyver to come through again? And that means their defense.
Lot to break down today on your Locked On Broncos Squad show. And of course, thank you for making us your first listen of the day on the Locked On Podcast Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network in the universe. We'll break it all down here on today's Broncos Squad show.
From the South Stands, it's the Broncos Squad. Everything Denver Broncos every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Mile High City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Gear up and squad up. The Broncos Squad show starts now.
Yes, gear up and squad up. It is your Locked On Broncos Squad show. Aniello Piro, Cody Roark, Nick Ferguson, Sarah Bettinger still on assignment, but will be back with us sooner rather than later. So a lot to get into today. And guys, real quick, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Plenty to unpack on the program here today. The next time you'll hear from us three together will be after the Denver Broncos take on the Kansas City Chiefs and what is the matchup of the season for the Denver Broncos. So we'll break that down throughout the course of the program today. A couple of housekeeping things I want to get out here real quick. One, some general reaction to what we saw against Houston. But first and foremost, and we'll touch on this later on in the segment, or later on the show rather, thoughts and prayers and well wishes to Alex Singleton and his family with the scary news that came out yesterday, him being diagnosed with testicular cancer. Seems like everything's good to go there for the most part. We'll touch on that later, but definitely wanted to mention that off the rip. But Cody, why don't we start with you, my man? You feeling a little bit better about the Broncos going up against Kansas City after last week, or where you at?
Well, look, I mean, they played a lot of games in the last handful of 6 or 7 weeks, and don't even get me started. Like the new generation doing the whole 6-7 stuff. Please stop. Please stop. That's not what we're aiming for here. The brain rot that we go through in society today drives me nuts. But no, like they played a lot of football. They had a mini bye week. I talked to a few players that they decided to take the weekend to kind of get away, go eat, couple hours out of town just to escape, see some scenery. And I think that'll be good for them. But they're back at the building. They were back, obviously, on Monday, team meeting, ready to rock and roll. It's a big week here. What I would say is the biggest game of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be huge. And Nick, I mean, we were all, we went on that little tangent there, or however you want to describe it at the end of the show last week about, being critical, being objective, right? And there really wasn't a lot to celebrate with this Broncos on offense coming off that win against Houston. Are you still kind of feeling the same going into this matchup against Kansas City?
Yeah, I am. And I don't want to say it was a tangent. It was just the fact of us speaking truth to power of what we were actually seeing from this Broncos offense. Look, let's not mince our words as far as what's actually happened thus far this season. We haven't really seen kind of an offensive explosion against a quality team in a long time for the Denver Broncos. You can look at the Dallas Cowboys game and say, well, look at what the Broncos did against the Dallas Cowboys defense. But that was a defense that was kind of low at the bottom of all the statistical categories in the NFL. So for me, this is the Broncos' final exam, if you will. Or better yet, you know what? Final exam comes later. This is the Broncos' midterm, right? You want to make sure that you are performing well and you're doing it against a team that you haven't really beaten in a while. And I know some people probably bark at me. Well, Nick, they did beat them at the beginning of the year, 38-0. Yeah, they did. But let's be totally transparent about the situation. It was against Carson Wentz and a bunch of backups. So if you really want to show that you've turned a corner and you've taken this 10-day kind of bye, if you want to call it, and really revamp your offense, you have to really show it on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's well said, and I love your analogy of midterm, right? Because I remember like when I was in school, in high school, like the midterm and the final sometimes would make up like 75% of your grade.
You went to
like
class?
It wouldn't matter as much with the homework and all the other stuff as well. And so I do think, Cody, that this is team moving forward in this game against Kansas City.
I mean, yeah, look, everything kind of boils up to now, right? It's a week-to-week league. I feel like this was a weird week in the NFL as we saw over the weekend. Not only do we see Denver win 10-7 on Thursday night, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills laid a massive egg against the Miami Dolphins. They had some interesting conversations that weren't being had over there that we were seeing a little bit here in Denver. And then last night, that Monday Night Football matchup between the Packers and the Eagles, 10-7.
Did Cody's Wi-Fi drop for you, Nick?
An offensive slugfest.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, my Wi-Fi was in and out there at the end. I thought I froze. I think you froze, whatever it is. But Nick, I'll let you respond to that.
Well, Cody is absolutely right. It's been kind of weird in the NFL. I mean, a Buffalo team that you thought most kind of predicted that would kind of run away with things. They just had to get over the hill, which was Kansas City. I mean, they've lost 3 games this season. Who would have thought that they would have went into Miami and lost the way that they did? So that team is having issues. So if you are a Denver Broncos fan, once again, we laid out our issues with them on Thursday night. I mean, you are in the best spot that you could ever been in the past 4 or 5 years. You just need to go out and show that you can beat Kansas City. And listen, guys, full transparency, at the beginning of the season, as we were breaking down things, I said the Broncos were going to beat Kansas City twice this season. Hopefully they make me right, but that is what this organization and the team's going to need to kind of move their game to the second level.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot of talk about Andy Reid coming off the bye, right? I believe his record is 22-4 lifetime for his career. I personally read into that. I'm not going to just discount that. I mean, the Broncos on offense have enough problems. Don't out me like that. I do like to play the numbers, but it just point being, like, and I've had this belief throughout the course of the season. Like, we've seen Buffalo look good. We've seen some other teams in the AFC look good, but like, I'm still waiting for Kansas City to be knocked off. And I understand that maybe this is the most vulnerable they have looked in the last, really just the entire Andy Reid Mahomes era, but I will believe it when I see it. So because of that, I factor in the bye statistics as well. And at the end of the day, man, the Broncos offense just does not make me believe right now that they're in the right place to go out and beat Kansas City, even at home, Cody.
Yeah, they've got to come out and get off to a hot start. And look, I think we're going to preview the offensive side here in just a little bit. I think there's so many different things kind of piling up right now when you look at where this offense is at. I mean, Denver's banged up right now, offensively, defensively. We don't know the status yet of J.K. Dobbins, who suffered a foot injury. There's been some speculation online, nothing of confirmation at this point. Defensively, Jonah Ellis left the game with a hamstring injury. Karene Reed leaves the game with a hamstring injury last week. Alex Singleton, obviously, as we know, will miss this game. We'll miss several weeks here. And so the Broncos are thin at linebacker depth right now. Outside linebacker took a shot with Jonah Ellis not being there. Maybe he'll be back on the field this week. Could we see potentially Drew Sanders, his window activated at some point? He's been on the side field for the last couple of weeks. So coming into this week, I mean, this is the banged up Broncos. And with all the questions about the offense, the struggles, and everything that has gone on with this unit, it just seems like the perfect week to kind of just say, hey, you know what? We're going to come out. We're going to respond really well. That's the hope, at least. Will they do that? I mean, we're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, I hope so, right? Because if we can get that Broncos offense that played like they did against the Dallas Cowboys, I mean, the Broncos are going to have an excellent chance to win this game, right? But it's just been so, black or white or flip or flop, whatever terminology you want to use with this Broncos offense. There just hasn't really been a level of consistency throughout the course of the season. And Cody, you mentioned it. We're going to dive into the offense and the defense in particular as the show goes along. But I want to take a step back as well. I think the entire NFL, anyone not who's a Kansas City fan or plays in that organization, I think everybody is rooting for the Denver Broncos to win this game on Sunday, because as things currently stand, the Broncos at 8-2 in firm command of the AFC West. The Chargers are a game behind them at 7-3. And then you've got the Chiefs at 5-4. As we alluded to, this is maybe the most vulnerable they have looked in this Mahomes Reid era. So Nick, I mean, you played obviously for the Broncos, but you played around the league as well. I mean, a win for the Broncos here goes a long way in making the path a lot tougher for Kansas City to get back to where they once were.
Yeah, it does, because when you look at Kansas City so far this season, they've already dropped 2 games to AFC opponents. Dropping the third one will put them in a very difficult situation. They've lost to the Bills. They've lost to the Chargers. If you lose to the Broncos, it makes your path, as far as seeding is concerned, very tough. But you said something about Andy Reid and his record coming off a bye and how this doesn't look like the typical Kansas City Chiefs team as we've seen in the past. And you're absolutely right. But here's what I know. I mean, animals, when backed into a corner, become really dangerous, especially animals like possum. And when you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, we saw it last season. This could be another season where Kansas City's playing possum. And with that team playing possum and knowing how important this game is for them, you can expect a couple of wrinkles that the Broncos were not planned for and did not see, because when you look at this Chiefs team, the one thing that they don't do well is run the ball, right? They don't run the ball well, but Kareem Hunt has done a great job catching the ball out of the backfield, and that has proven to be somewhat a problem for the Denver Broncos this season, covering running backs out of the backfield. Now, you mentioned Alex Singleton. He was one of those guys that would have issues, but you have Drake Greenlaw and Justin Strenard, two linebackers who I believe are better at that skill set in covering running backs out of the backfield. So if the Broncos can eliminate that and force Patrick Mahomes to play quarterback, they stand a chance.
Yeah, and it's 22-4. That is the record for Andy Reid in his head coaching career off of the bye. Only one of those losses came when he was head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. I believe 3 of those come in as he's been head coach of the Chiefs. So that's a 9-3 record for Andy Reid coming off the bye. And I agree with you, man. I think that's the one thing you're really confident in this game with the Broncos is their defense. And obviously you laid it out perfectly, Nick, knowing where the Kansas City Chiefs are with their rushing attack. And look, Pat Surtain's not going to be out there for the Broncos, but with everything that we've wanted to see or haven't seen from the Broncos offense this year, or even on this win streak, we've seen in the defense. And there's that old saying, you guys are both defensive guys, right? Defense wins championships. So even if the Broncos offense doesn't have their best day, Cody, I'm curious to see if the defense can hold strong enough against Mahomes, against Reed, Kelsey and company to put the Broncos in a position to win this game. Because if they do, like let's say it's a 17-13 Broncos win, obviously you'd like the Broncos to win a little bit more by margin and score more points, but you got to feel really confident in the defense if the game does play out that way.
Yeah, I mean, if Denver were to win this game 17-13, I don't think there's going to be anybody in the world complaining about that, right? 13 points against the Chiefs. Look, Kansas City's still dangerous, right? I think we can all acknowledge that. Patrick Mahomes may not be the guy that we saw 3 or 4 years ago. He's got really good pieces around him. Look, they got an offensive line that certainly has some works in progress, but they like their offensive tackle situation. That's been an improved area for them. You mentioned Kareem Hunt earlier. Isaiah Pacheco is more than likely, I think, anticipated to be back for this game after he had an injury. And then you have Xavier Worthy. You have Hollywood Brown. You have Juju Smith-Schuster. You have Rashee Rice. And, of course, Travis Kelce. This is a Chiefs offense that has plenty of weapons right now. And them coming off the bye is going to be very interesting to see how they approach it. But I wanted to kind of throw this to Nick as well. Nick, you've been part of teams. You've been part of many bye weeks over the course of your NFL career. What actually takes place during a bye week?
Well, the first part is trying to get away like the Broncos have done, thus far. But once you get over that part, it is coming back to the team. And that first day is just kind of going through all the mistakes that were made in the previous game. But then now you get out there on the field and you walk through everything that you've gone through throughout the season, some miscues to make sure that, hey, everyone's on the same page. Because teams, when they watch film, they look at what you do well, but they want to find out what you don't do well and try to take advantage of that. And then after that, you get into the nuts and bolts of your next opponent and you try to turn the page on the previous game. And hopefully you're coming off a win like the Broncos are coming off a win. But as it pertains to the defense, it's business as usual. The offense, they need to change something up. They need somewhat of an offensive facelift, if you will. Now, the question is, and we talked about it after the Raiders game, will that, in fact, happen from the person who's calling the plays? Because that is the person that actually applies the oil that greases the engines for the offense. But if you're telling me that Sean Payton coming off this mini bye will do this, I'll say okay. But the chances are not going to happen.
Well, I think that this mini bye and the bye, like the regular bye, I think are coming at a great time for this Denver Broncos team. And Cody, you and I were in that locker room after the game on Thursday. J.K. Dobbins, Adam Troutman, Mike McGlinchey, a couple other players, harping on, one, we've got to be better, but two, they believe the offense is closer to coming around than maybe the outside perspective is as well. And that's going to need to happen. And I agree with you, Nick, if there was ever, you have to trust Sean Payton. You have to trust this Broncos coaching staff on offense to get it figured out with this extra rest going into this game against Kansas City. And look, their schedule's been a gauntlet, Cody, with all the games they've played in London, on the road, at home. I mean, the last month and a half for the Broncos has been insanity. So the fact that they've managed to rip off this 7-game win streak in spite of that is fantastic. So let's see if they can can use this mini bye week to their advantage and come out and give a good punch against Kansas City, Cody.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a great opportunity here. The fact that, like, the difference between this Broncos team and this Chiefs team is what we saw them struggle with last year. Last year in one-score games, the Chiefs were very good. This year, they haven't been. Last year, Denver struggled in these one-score games where they would lose. This year, they found ways to win these games. So you just got to keep it close. And obviously, I think try to just get back to basics here. I mean, we caught up with Sean Payton on Monday on the conference call. And one of the things he told us was it's just about, I would say, not necessarily escaping, but putting together, it's like, all right, what can we do as coaches to simplify things? Not necessarily like, hey, this is too advanced for us, but if we're doing too much, like they were talking about Bo Nix, his ability to avoid sacks, but also when there's pressure, that internal clock is speeding up. He says we also have to factor in, Bo has certain dropbacks, like 3-step, 5-step, 7-step drops, but also our routes have to marry with those. So, for example, if you're running a 5-step drop, which is kind of deeper to intermediate developing stuff, if your receiver runs it too shallow, that throws the timing off. Now, on your deeper developing ones, if he runs, too far off, like, for example, the Broncos have many plays offensively where they use one guy to run off a corner and a safety, and they bring a guy back underneath. When that guy's jogging or is not going full speed, then all of a sudden it's easy for the defense to pick up. So he says it's these little nuances, these little attention to detail areas. Certainly penalties have been an issue. I highlighted this statistic yesterday. The Broncos are the most penalized team in the NFL right now. 83 penalties through 10 weeks. 42 of those have been on the offensive side of the ball. So they have to clean that up. And Sean says we can clean that up. There's obviously some calls they don't agree with, but he says we have to clean it up. We've been hearing this for a while, so we'll actually see if that is the case. But it's easier than just saying we're going to clean it up. You have to do those little things, and that's refining technique and going through those little things. We'll see if that actually does happen, though.
Well, you can't shoot yourself in the foot, and penalties is just you can't have that many penalties in a game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, they've been able to win in spite of it, but if they want to beat the Chiefs on Sunday, they have to play a clean football game from beginning to end. So good thought there. All right, let's hit our break. When we come back, we'll continue along with the conversation. Let's dive into the offense. What needs to change? Is it play calling? Is it confidence with Bo Nix? Will J.K. Dobbins be out there for the Denver Broncos? We'll break all that down next right here on your Locked On Broncos Squad Show. Back in just a moment, folks. All right, you guys, real quick, let's tell you about the fine folks over at Rippling, because if you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply do not work together. That's not SaaS, that's SAAD, software at a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance, all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments in one system, Rippling moves the bottlenecks, busy work, and silos that your software created. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and perfectly in sync. It's seriously simple to use and gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operation as one, or just fill the gaps in your own software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now, guys, you can get 6 months free. That's 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnfl. Learn more at rippling.com/lockedonnfl. That's rippling.com/lockedonnfl. That's rippling.com/lockedonnfl for 6 months free. Terms and conditions, they do apply, but be sure to check out our friends over at Rippling and let them know that Locked On Broncos sent you. Ooh, got you guys mixed up there. Hold on. There we go. Back in order. All right. Welcome on back into your Locked On Broncos Squad Show. Aniello Piro, Cody Roark, and Nick Ferguson. Appreciate y'all rocking with us on the Locked On Broncos show, but also the entire Locked On Sports Network, which is now the #1 sports podcast network in the world. So appreciate all of y'all that rock with us and rock with the rest of the shows on the network. Do us a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. That way you guys never, ever miss an episode of your Locked On Broncos content. All right. So a good kind of opening sweep there to set the table. We all know the Broncos need to be better on offense. We hope the defense holds court. And obviously the biggest matchup of the year coming up this weekend against the Kansas City Chiefs. But let's dive into that offense in particular, because if the defense holds, the Broncos probably have a pretty good darn chance to win this game. If the offense picks up the slack, the Broncos also have a pretty good chance to win this game if that is the case. But Cody, will they? Will they figure it out? Will Bo Nix look more comfortable? Will Sean Payton simplify the play calling? Talk to me about this Broncos offense.
It really depends on the approach that the offense has this week in practice. One thing that Sean has said consistently is they've tried to simulate Wednesday's practices to feel more like Sunday. And in my head, Nick, I'm also thinking, I'm like, how can you do that when you're so limited by the CBA, when you're limited by contact and all these hours of what you are allowed and are not allowed to do? How do you simulate that in practice? I think is always an interesting thing. Obviously, in the media, we don't get to see that because we can't observe the full practice in its entirety. We only get individual and team stretch. But for Bo Nix, look, as much of the conversation, people have had about Bo so far since Thursday night, we can all acknowledge Bo has to be better. But I think the objective take here is that while Bo can be better, Sean can be better. The personnel around Bo can certainly be better. People forget this is a team game. And yes, there is the most pressure on the quarterback, but when the other pieces around him aren't necessarily doing their job as well, it's hard for him to do his job. And there's elements, as we said, we're not saying that Bo is blameless in this, but Bo's got to step up. He's got a chance to change the narrative this week. And I teased it to open up the show here today. But if you can beat this Kansas City Chiefs team, which look, the Steve Spagnuolo defense is very, very hard to go against. Now, while they have some of their own struggles this year, they have guys with motors. You talk about, obviously, Jones on the interior. You talk about George Karlaftis on the outside. You talk about their linebacker core that they have. They're very good at flying around. And one thing I know that Steve Spagnuolo loves to do, especially on third down, those double A gap blitzes from those inside linebackers. So Denver's just going to have to be on their P's and Q's this week. I think the biggest key this week, Nick, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, there has to be a better run-pass balance versus it just being a pass-heavy offense, because the last 2 weeks, Bo Nix has thrown the ball 15-plus times in the first half, whereas Denver has ran the ball 6 times in each of the last 2 games in the first half alone. If that run-pass balance is out of whack in this game, it's going to be hard for the Broncos to overcome that against KC.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, Cody, because when you look at who leads the NFL in passing attempts, it is one Bo Nix. And that tells you that Sean Payton is putting a heavy emphasis on throwing the ball more than he's actually running the ball. And there's something else that the Broncos, well, there's a couple of things that the Broncos need to do to make sure that they even stay in the game with Kansas City offensively. And one is creating space. And what I mean by that is opening up your offense, make these reads easier for Bo Nix, because what I've seen from Spagnuolo, he's done it against the Broncos, he's done it against other teams, but when the Broncos run a lot of condensed formations, which they do, you can see pressure coming off the edge. They will bring the nickel back in the corner off the edge, and what we haven't seen is kind of an evolution to the Sean Payton offense where the receivers seem as though they know the scheme and they understand the scheme, where they're making slight adjustments. And what I mean by that is you see a nickel and you can tell when a guy's coming from the secondary, we try to hide it, but we're not great actors. When you see that and you have a deep route, cut your route off, run an out route, run a stop route, turn around. And these are the same things we see from Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, and that's because they played for a long time. And these are plays from these two guys that are not called in the offense. It's just like, okay, well, it was almost like Wes Welker playing with Tom Brady. Run where the defender isn't. Just run, sit down, flash your numbers. And this is what the Broncos are going to have to tend to from a defense standpoint. But offensively, you want to see more spacing. And here's the other thing that helps you out, man. We want to see Bo play from under center, right? Because when your quarterback is under center defensively, we have no idea what it's going to be. It's like a 50-50 pass, 50-50 run. When you sit him in the shotgun, this is where Bo has seen a lot of his issues, especially with his footwork, because guess what? In the shotgun, he's already in his drop. He's already in his 5-step, 7-step drop. So now it's like, okay, well, Cody, you talked about timing and rhythm with the wide receivers. There was a play in the Thursday night game against the Raiders where Bo was criticized for throwing the check down. Why? They ran a dagger concept. Pat Bryant ran the clear out, and you had Troy Franklin coming from left to right, running the dagger route at 15 yards. Guess what? He took too damn long running the route. And then he rounded it off. Bo hits his back foot. He's ready to let it fly. And now he has to hold on to it. The pressure's in his face and check down. This is why this offense is having issues, and it's not just Bo Nix.
Yeah, I think it's easy to just blame the quarterback, right? Because it is the most important position, right? It seems like you can only go as far as your quarterback at times, but I do think that there's blame to be passed around. But Cody, you talked about the need to kind of have a more focus on the splits between pass and run. I agree with you. I mean, that's something that we've been talking about, you and I, off the air, on the air, throughout the course of the season, right? But if J.K. Dobbins is not able to go, and as of this, we're recording and we're live right now, it's still up in the air right now, but seems like he's dealing with an injury to the foot and whatnot, had that tweet that he put out on Friday as well. So let's just assume for conversation's sake that J.K. Dobbins is not playing in this game. I don't know if I trust Sean Payton to, even be more run pass split than he has been in the past, just because you don't have your number one guy, and your number two option is RJ Harvey, who's been good in spurts, but Jaleel McLaughlin has been banished to the shadow realm. We see Tyler Bidet and, kind of these little spruce plays every now and again. So if J.K. Dobbins is not out there for the Broncos on Sunday, Cody, I think you'll see even more passes than runs.
Then you might as well wave the white flag and say, hey, we plan on losing this game here, because you have to run in today's NFL. And look, we're going to obviously keep you up to date as to what's going on with J.K. Dobbins. We'll be out of practice on Wednesday afternoon, and we'll see who's there, who's not, who's on the side field. But we're monitoring J.K. here. It wouldn't surprise me if he's DNP on Wednesday or a limited participant. But we're going to keep monitoring that foot injury there. Now, here's the thing. Let's operate under the hypothetical that J.K. is not able to go this week. What is Sean Payton's plan? Because here's the thing that frustrates me with him drafting RJ Harvey. I love the pick so much, but Sean has not used RJ as this all-around back. Yes, we've seen him have value as a pass catcher. I love what he's bringing to the table as a receiver. But when it comes to running the football, the only time RJ Harvey's getting touches, it's going on outside runs. We're talking stretch plays or toss plays or pitches. And that's it. That's like when RJ's in, it's an outside run. And it doesn't get going, because that's really what defenses know. Say, hey, number 12 is in the game. He's either catching it or it's going to the outside, and they're playing off that. Number 2, Tyler Bidet, when number 28 is in the game, he's not getting the ball handed off to him. So you know what the defense knows? They're throwing it here. To me, that is one of the more glaring tendencies that I think have put this Broncos offense in a tough position from the play calling standpoint. You have to find a way to run the ball, and it can't just be J.K. That's why you drafted RJ. You have a guy like J.K. who we know is going to be the primary guy, but now you can use RJ as well. Nick, I have yet to see this duo have it where, let's say, J.K. has 20 carries, RJ has 15. That's the way that this should go. And if you get that run game going in that manner with these two guys on a series-to-series basis, everything else, your play action stuff that you want to do, everything opens up here, and you're not as one-dimensional. To me, if J.K. is unable to go this week, I am concerned about how Denver's going to approach attacking Kansas City.
Well, you know what, Cody, man, you sound like me when I was about 10 years old and I wrote Santa a list of all these things I wanted, and I didn't get any of those things, right? Because you're giving us a CVS list type of receipt of all these things that you want the Broncos to do, and all those things are correct. The thing that we don't know is, will Sean Payton actually do this? And if J.K. can't go, here's the evolution to the offense. We've seen it take place in the Houston game with Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin was now elevated to the role that Marvin Mims had. Remember last year in Arrowhead when the Broncos played Kansas City? Marvin Mims lined up in the backfield, and that was the Broncos' way of trying to get more speed and athleticism at that position. But when you do that, you kind of give your hand, you show your hand, if you will, like you were just describing with a lot of the other guys that you bring in like Bidet, and say, okay, well, this is a passing down, because Troy Franklin, albeit as fast as he is, just like Marvin Mims, he's not a real big guy. And the Broncos can't stand to have any more injuries. So the way that you offset if J.K. Dobbins can't play is incorporating a group that we haven't really seen at a high level. And believe it or not, it's the tight ends. This is where Evan Ingram actually comes in. This is where Sean Payton builds a game plan with 4 or 5 plays just to feature a guy like Evan Ingram. And oh, by the way, you spread Evan Ingram out just like Kansas City does with a guy like Travis Kelce, because that way you can identify man or zone. But here's the biggest thing, and you know this, Cody, it sets up a light box, so now you can run.
That's the key, man. And you talk about lining up Evan Ingram outside. Like, that's what I thought the expectation was for Evan Ingram when the Denver Broncos kind of brought him in, that joker dynamic role that Sean Payton liked to throw out them. Okay, we'll line him up on the line. We'll line him up outside. We'll get creative and whatnot. And Cody, to just bring it back to your point, I love your notion about tipping the hand a little bit with Sean Payton. Tip your hand all you want when Drew Brees is your quarterback. Tip your hand all you want when you have prime Peyton Manning. And it's funny, right? Because the Broncos have won 7 straight games, so it's hard to kind of bury them on this. But like, Bo Nix is not playing with nearly enough confidence that you can tip your hand in that scenario and expect to have good results against a quality team like you are facing this week in Kansas City. So I agree with Nick completely. This should be an Evan Ingram game. I mean, we haven't really had one of those this season. Missed him on a touchdown pass in the game against the Raiders on Thursday night. And so we'll have to see, how the Broncos try to adjust to that. But Cody, I'm more so curious because I want to see if Sean Payton can actually commit to a run if J.K. Dobbins is not playing.
Yeah, well, look, this is Mahomes versus Bo Nix for the second time ever. And I loved what Bo was able to do in that first matchup. The Broncos should have won that game last year. But, you have that special teams mishap. It leads to a block kick. You leave Arrowhead as losers. And then, luckily the Broncos responded the next week against the Atlanta Falcons. I just think that there has to be a concerted effort here this week going into it, saying, okay, if JK is unable to go, no matter what, we're going to line up and we're going to pound the rock here with RJ Harvey. RJ's a guy. We talk about him being a former quarterback. RJ's got good vision, right? Yes, you want to use that on the outside at times, but RJ, I think, can also be patient at hitting the pocket inside. That's what the Broncos need to do. Maybe this week, instead of it being more outside zone related in terms of the blocking scheme, why don't you go to a little bit more gap scheme and just line it up? Hey, we're trying to get to the A gap. Let's do it. The offensive line, I think, can create those holes, especially with Quinn Miners, who at one point of the game on Thursday night, Quinn Miners came out with an illness, was able to come back in on that final drive that Denver had, and J.K. Dobbins on that drive, despite his foot injury, had 6 carries for 25 yards to help close things out. There is a formula to be had here, so we'll see if the Broncos could take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see if they can. And the one thing about it, man, this team is full of talent, but we just haven't seen the talent actually utilized the way that it should. And I have to say this, man. I looked around on a lot of the league and a lot of games on Sunday and just watch other offenses execute. And I was just kind of jealous and envious of what they were doing because I'm like, these are the same things that the Broncos can actually do. And it's almost like an updated offense, if you will. And if Sean Payton can, put, I guess, his ego aside and say, you know what, it's about the players being able to execute on the field, not just how smart I am, but just kind of pulling back. And that's not to say that the players are incapable of running the gamut of his offense, but as a smart offensive coordinator, you have to recognize what your strengths are and your weaknesses are. Because look at where we are. We're almost at week 11, and we can't continue to have these conversations over and over. What the Broncos offense could be is going to take more time to develop. No, I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of the justifications, man. The scale back, get these players out there, give them some positive plays, and let's blow the doors off of Kansas City.
Yeah, it's time, and to go back to the analogy you made earlier, here's your midterm. That final exam is coming up sooner rather than later. So there's really no more time for the Broncos to try to figure it out. We got to see them start on go and get after it in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. So well said from Nick, well said from Cody. All right, let's hit a break. When we come back, talked about the offense. Let's talk about what we think we know, which is this Denver Broncos defense that is playing at a pretty high level. We'll break that down next right here on your Locked On Broncos Squad show. And real quick, a word from our friends over at Peloton featuring our friend Cody Roark.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it because it also helps you correct your form in real time and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Good job, Cody. Worked really hard on that read.
I love my Peloton, man. I tell you what, that's my thing. You know, I take it with me everywhere. Not my bike, but I can take the workouts on my phone. You know, you do your workouts, set up to TV. Gotta stay in shape, man. You think I'm about to go running in this winter weather here in Denver? Come on, man.
I feel you. So be sure to check out our friends over at Peloton. Let them know that Locked On Broncos sent you. This is your Locked On Broncos squad show. Aniello Piro, Cody Roark, Nick Ferguson, Sarah Bettinger on assignment. Will be back with us sooner rather than later. Do us a favor, hit that like button, smash that subscribe button as well. That way you guys never, ever miss anything coming out on the channel. Also really helps us out. Defense. Okay. Let's start with Alex Singleton real quick with the news that came out yesterday. He was diagnosed and underwent successful surgery to have testicular cancer removed from his body. I don't even know what to make of that, fellas. Nick, I'll kind of start with you, and it seems like this is something that came up in one of those routine drug tests that players have to do throughout the course of the season. I'm sure you could speak to that a little bit. I'm sure it's a little ironic because everything that I've heard is like, you know, when that time comes around, the players sometimes roll their eyes or, you know, we've seen like Blue Mountain State make fun of it in TV episodes, and Pat McAfee has his own thoughts about, you know, drug testing in the middle of the season and whatnot. But in this case, Nick, it may have saved Alex Singleton's life.
Yeah, it has, and you're absolutely right. There's no player that I know of that loves taking those tests, and as a guy that has taken a lot of those tests over my time as a player, and they're so-called random, and I'm like, well, how could I be randomly tested in 3 months like 4 times? But yet I digress. But the moral to the story is that, guys, we need to go out there and we need to be more assertive as far as our healthcare is concerned. And I know usually there's standards as far as waiting to a certain age to get certain tests. I'm going to tell you, don't wait, right? I know some individuals who have waited and they've waited entirely too long, but it's best to kind of get this drug test. And typically, I'll tell you this too, when you go to a doctor and you ask them for a blood test, they only give you certain or the typical blood panels. But do your research, find out some more about your family history, and get all your blood work done. Now, your insurance company may not cover it in its totality, but trust me, as far as peace of mind, you want to make sure. And I'm so neurotic with it, man. I get 2 PSA tests every 6 months.
Wow.
Right? Every 6 months, I'm going in to make sure I know my PSA numbers. And for those guys who don't want to do it, there's a new way to do it. The old way is just that. It's old. All you have to do, go in, they draw your blood, and they can give you your numbers in a day or two. So the one thing I learned from this Alex Singleton situation, man, is be more proactive instead of reactive about your health.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I heard the news, I was like, I got to go to the doctor. Like, that was like the first thought, right? I mean, we've seen some media members just locally here in the Denver market that have undergone some, you know, cancer battles and whatnot. I mean, a good colleague and a mentor of mine, Les Shapiro, unfortunately, we lost him to lung cancer a handful of years ago. And, you know, I still think of him to this day. Like, producing his show was like one of the first things that I did in this business. And so, you know, it's not unmanly to go get checked, ladies and gentlemen, or gentlemen in this fact. So I think it's well said from you, Nick. But also, Cody, you know, you and I have a little bit of a relationship with Alex. You know, I've worked with him on the past in some projects, you know, that don't involve football. I know you've worked on some projects with him as well. Just a great guy, first and foremost. I couldn't imagine what mentally was going through his head with this blood test and then the result of the blood test and then playing in the game on Thursday Night Football. I mean, what a warrior.
Yeah, look, it's also a tip of the cap to the Broncos organization, because one thing Alex told us yesterday was he got the initial result that there was an elevated protein in his urine sample. And he said, you know, I don't take anything, you know, that I'm not supposed to be taking. So they scheduled an appointment. The Broncos did with a urologist And they obviously they got that. The pre-CT, the pre-surgery CT revealed that it had not spread, which was obviously the best news for Alex in this situation here. But the Broncos took care of scheduling the surgery, having everything going, and his focus all last week, despite this, was I want to play football on Thursday. So he played on Thursday and then went and he had the surgery on Friday. Then obviously we all found out yesterday as he revealed the news to the world. I mean, this is something that's very common between the ages, men of the ages of 15 to 35. This is something that is very prevalent. One guy every day, if you look at the Testicular Cancer Society, awareness, one guy every day passes away due to testicular cancer. So, if you feel off, make sure you just get checked, get treated. I think that's always one important thing. But he is a warrior. He's a tough guy. He's going to miss the next several weeks. And look, I think that right now his life is far more important than the game of football. While the Broncos will miss his presence, his leadership on the field, life is more important. His wife, they just had a newborn baby over the summer. Their child, that's more important right now than anything else that has anything to do with football. The Broncos, they'll manage without him. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot more Justin Sternad and Drake Greenlaw this week. We mentioned the injuries earlier at the other linebacker spots there with Karene Reed. We could see Lavelle Bailey, maybe Jordan Turner elevated at this point, just to bring guys in and just have as much depth as possible. Drew Sanders has been on the side field for the last 2 weeks. We'll see if he's ready to rock and roll if the Broncos activate his window at some point after he had that foot injury early on in training camp. So just a scary situation for Singleton, but Singleton's focus is where it needs to be, and that's on his life and obviously getting healthy and recovering. Luckily, after this week, the Broncos have a bye, so maybe we'll see him for that Raiders game here in a few weeks. But glad he's going to be okay.
Yeah, obviously thoughts, prayers, well wishes, all that kind of stuff to Alex Singleton and his family, and wanted to address that on the show today just because, we have fun talking ball, but this is real life type of stuff that came out this week. So the fact that he can even return this season is absolutely unbelievable, by the way. I mean, speaks to Alex Singleton, his character and everything he's going through. But let's bring it back to football. I want to throw a big picture out to both of you guys, and either one of you can take it. A couple of weeks ago, the Buffalo Bills take care of business against the Kansas City Chiefs. Good win for them. They've beat them in the regular season, haven't beat them in the playoffs. We just saw what happened to the Buffalo Bills, specifically with their defense against the Miami Dolphins, right? So if I'm going apples to apples here, just basic knowledge, the Broncos defense is much better than the Bills defense on a typical week in and week out basis. And they did a pretty decent job of slowing down Patrick Mahomes in that game. So minus Alex Singleton, minus Pat Surtain, Cody, I'll toss it to you first. This Broncos defense is still in a really good position to make life miserable for Patrick Mahomes in this offense.
Yeah, they are. Look, we mentioned the offensive weapons that Kansas City certainly has early on in the show. I still think that Denver's depth defensively, that's been paying off for them. Even when guys are banged up. We talked about Jonah Ellis being hurt and banged up a little bit. The depth has shown up here for Denver. Look, you got Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper. These guys are getting after the quarterback. One thing I watched from that Buffalo Bills-Kansas City game was Patrick Mahomes getting hit a lot, getting sacked by the Buffalo Bills defense. Denver's got to continue that trend here of getting after QBs. I mean, last week against Geno Smith, there was 6 sacks on him, 5 in that first half. They did a terrific job in that regard of doing that. But that's the way you slow down here, this Chiefs offense. You back them up into long field positions. Look, and even then, it's still Patrick Mahomes, 3rd and long. That's the situation that always scares me when you go up against Kansas City, because you'll lock up in coverage. Everybody will run off downfield, and then Mahomes will use his legs, and somehow it's 3rd and 17. He picks up 18, 19. That can't happen, obviously, this week. And I think Nick Bonito last year on the road at Kansas City did a really good job of getting after him. There were a couple times he had Mahomes wrapped up. Mahomes was able to throw the ball away despite being in the grasp of Bonito there. And he escaped one of those sacks that he had there. So 3rd down is going to be one of the bigger keys this week here for Denver defensively when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. And that means that on their early downs, 1st and 2nd down, they've got to be better. They've got to be really good. That's going to be the money down so far this week.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Nick Bonito, and the last time that Nick Bonito and his defense faced Patrick Mahomes and a full Kansas City Chiefs offense, 4 sacks on the day, but Nick Bonito had Patrick Mahomes in his clutches, not once, but twice, but even 3 times, and he couldn't really get him down. And this is what you're going to have to prepare for, because with Patrick Mahomes, it's not the first route. It's not the second one. It's the 3rd one, because he does a great job of moving in the pocket. When it comes to improvisation from a quarterback position, there's not a quarterback in today's game better than Patrick Mahomes. Throwing overhand or underhand, he's going to find a way to get it to a wide receiver, even if he has to drop kick it to a wide receiver. He's going to find a way. This is where, the Broncos defenders have to be great with their eyes. When the team comes out and they line up in their formation, it's got to be communication, identification of certain guys. And I'm not even talking about Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is not a major threat because he can't run as though he could years ago. So he is just kind of an intermediate type of possession receiver. But those other guys, man, they got some track guys out there. And if you are a guy like Riley Moss, you have to figure, once again, they're going to come after you. They're trying to get those big explosive plays, and they want to put Riley Moss in a situation, even if he's in great coverage, maybe there's a PI down the field, and you put the ball at the spot of the foul to make things easier for Kansas City. So this is going to be a challenge for a defensive unit that has performed well this season. It's going to be all hands on deck. The communication has to be important because we know the crowd is going to be loud. And if you've ever attended a Denver Broncos game, and I can tell you this as a player, I've stood 5 feet away from Champ Bailey, and he could not hear me when that crowd was all geared up. So communication is going to be important for these guys to master on Sunday.
Yeah, I think it's massive, right? Because Patrick Mahomes can pull the rabbit out of the hat at any given time, it seems like right now. And even it seems like when you've got him sacked or you've got them put away, he can figure out a way to improv on the fly and make a pass or make a run, that dual threat nature that Mahomes brings to the table as well. But I think I agree with you completely, Nick. And the one thing that you've got to feel good about with this Broncos defense is where they're at in the sack department. 46 sacks. 46 sacks. It is November the 11th. Yeah. Like it is crazy the motor at which this Broncos defensive line is able to play with. And
you know what they had last year?
Tell me.
63.
Precisely. So, this Broncos defense obviously up in the ante in the sack department and continue to play at an exceptional level when rushing the passer. But, Brady wasn't immune to it. Manning wasn't immune to it. There's not a single quarterback in NFL history that is immune to a defense that can get a pass rush home without having to blitz every single time. And the Broncos are one of those defenses that are able to do that. So I think that's a major key to victory, is just disrupting Patrick Mahomes as much as you could. Now, not that we're talking offense necessarily, that's where it's going to be on the offense to keep the pressure on Mahomes, because if you play a game like you did against the Raiders, Mahomes is eventually going to figure it out. He's going to score a touchdown. He's going to put you in field goal range. So the Broncos offense needs to try to get some separation in the scoreboard in this game, but the Broncos defense, Cody, has to set the tone.
Heck, it would be nice if the defense even scored this week as well. Look, turnovers has been something that you've wanted this Broncos team to force more of. They haven't had as many takeaways in a sense of interceptions, recovered fumbles this year that, maybe you would have liked, but you need to, they're getting off the field. They're getting fourth down stops. That all kind of counts the same in terms of turnover on downs here. But that's why I think in this game, you're going to need a little bit more of. This is going to be those games where when you dial up that pressure, maybe your defensive lineman, if Mahomes is trying to fire a shot across the middle as quick as he can, your D-line gets their hands up, tips the ball into the air, tip drill. You know what we say, us DBs, tips lead to picks. We love it. We'll take it. And the Broncos are going to have to find a way, I feel like, this week to score on defense if they can. And your chances of winning, if you score on defense, your chances of winning, they increase significantly on top of that. So that is going to be a key here. It's hard. We'll save maybe some of that stuff for some bold predictions. But I think more importantly, getting off the field on third down, Denver is still the best third down defense right now in the NFL. They're the best red zone defense right now in the league. Do a really good job of tightening up in those situations here. And I'd say compressing things. Look, this is going to be a week where you don't have Pat Surtain. Once again, more than likely, talk to some people. Initially when the injury happened, they say, hey, we hope we can be back against Kansas City. Then he had the second opinion. I don't think we're going to see him potentially till the Commanders game or the Raiders game. After the Commanders game, there's the Broncos will open up coming out of the bye, 2 back-to-back road games. But you need guys like Chris Abrams-Drain, Jahdae Barron, obviously Riley Moss. These guys need to continue to step up. And, of course, continue to play through the heart and soul of what you got from that defense right now with Talanoa Hufanga. He, as I deemed it today, I call him the fire starter here for the Broncos defense.
Yeah, it's an all-hands-on-deck approach for sure to slow down Patrick Mahomes in this Kansas City offense. I don't want to steal Cody's thunder because we do have some bold predictions. So why don't we hit our final break? We'll come back and do just that. We'll lock in our official thoughts and predictions as the Denver Broncos get ready to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. All that and more when we come back right here on your Locked On Broncos Squad show. All right, you guys, real quick, let me tell you about the fine folks over at FanDuel because the NBA is back and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Guys, it keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So check out our friends over at FanDuel and let them know that Locked On Broncos sent you. All right, welcome on back into your Locked On Broncos Squad show. Aniello Piro, Cody Roark, Nick Ferguson. Appreciate all of y'all. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button. Really helps us out. Speaking of FanDuel and speaking of betting, I think this is a good way to kind of feed into our bold predictions. The Broncos are a home underdog in this game. They are, last I checked, the Kansas City Chiefs were 3.5 point road favorites coming into Denver. So the expectation from the sports books is the Kansas City Chiefs will win this game, or at least are favored to. I don't think they're completely off right now. I mean, this Broncos offense can't get out of its own way. You know, the Broncos are going to have to score more than 10 points to win this game against Kansas City. So I'll dish it to you real quick, Cody. Give me a bold prediction. Give me a take on this game. And if you want to react to the line against the spread as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care about Vegas. I mean, Vegas, right. Yeah, whatever. Vegas rules the world. I don't care. But
I think it's a good indicator, though. Like, because I agree.
I mean,
the
Broncos were underdogs against the Houston Texans as well, and Denver won. I mean, so right. I mean, we could factor in point differential, this and that. It is what it is. I mean, that's what makes the world go round in today's world, unfortunately. But the thing that matters to me the most, and I think the thing that matters to the players, is what happens between the lines, and that's in the trenches. That's the physicality of the game. That's the communication on the back end. I'm going to give a bold prediction here for the Broncos on defense. I think that they're going to sack Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to give this bold one here. Sack him 3+ times in Sunday's game and pick him off twice. I think they're going to force 2 takeaways there and also get after him 3 times defensively. I think we're going to see the defense continue to ramp up the success that they've had.
That is bold. That is very bold, Cody. I like that.
Fortune favors the bold.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Nick, what do you think?
Well, I'm going to go a little in the opposite direction. And if you want a bold predictions, usually I don't give them. But we're going to talk about 2 explosive plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, and Xavier Worthy is going to be on the opposite end of one of those, and that's going to be explosive touchdown. But when you think about this game, it's going to be a defensive type of game, because when you look at scoring defense, the Broncos are ranked number 3. Guess who's ranked number 4? The Kansas City Chiefs, right? So this is not going to be a blowout game by any team. And if it is, I would have to lean more on the side of Kansas City than the Denver Broncos. And that's because the offense, unless something changes on Sunday and we actually see it consistently, the Broncos have not been able to convert first downs. And if you don't convert first downs against this Kansas City Chiefs team, no matter how many struggles they've had thus far this season, they're going to find ways to move the ball down the field. And I don't care how great of a defense you are. And we talked about the number of sacks that the Broncos have right now. Hell, you could be the 2006 Baltimore Ravens. If you're on the field and you're losing time of possession, opposing quarterbacks, especially like Patrick Mahomes, they're going to find open wide receivers.
No, I think it's well said. And I guess I'll try to be the Debbie Downer of the bunch here, and Broncos country, feel free to come
Broncos country is going to fill up a pillowcase full of soap bars and get you, my man.
I'm just being objective. I don't think the Broncos are winning this game. Like if the Broncos offense plays anywhere, like take the Dallas game out of it. Let's use the other, 6 games in this win streak. Like
Cincinnati,
right. Okay. And that to me is kind of a throwaway just because no Joe Burrow and whatever. Right. But I just haven't seen enough from this Broncos offense to make me think that they can, even though they're at home, come out and beat Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. I hope I'm wrong. I want the Broncos to win. Let me go out there and state that as well. I'm not a Kansas City fan. I'm not betting Kansas City, none of that kind of stuff. If I had to make a wager, I'd probably take the Broncos with the 3.5 points at home because I like that number. But and this is pure instinct and just kind of feel, which is where I go sometimes with these games. Like I am shocked the Broncos are still on this 7-game win streak. I think they're lucky to have won some of the games that they've won. I mean, you don't score in like 3 quarters against the Jets, a miraculous comeback against the Giants. Okay, you take care of business against Dallas. If CJ Stroud plays, do they win that game against Houston? The Raiders are broken. So I'm just trying to say that like this is the first real kind of gut check game the Denver Broncos have had in a long time. And look, I'm not cementing and stamping my flag and saying the Broncos are losing this game. I could see the Broncos winning. I want them to win. But from my perspective, I just haven't seen – I'm not believing what my eyes are showing me with this offense, if that makes sense. Like, I need to see more from this Broncos offense to pick them in a game against Kansas City. Also factor in the game – or the notion of Andy Reid and this Chiefs offense and this team as a whole coming off the bye. I think Kansas City's had extra time to prepare, as has Denver to a certain extent. But Reid, they're kind of playing for their season, as you alluded to, Nick, a team with their back against the wall. I'm expecting the Chiefs to give it their best punch on Sunday. I think the Broncos defense can hold up. I'm still worried about the offense. Is that fair? Is that at least fair for Broncos country? Let me know.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Look, here's the thing with the offense. The offense can't keep playing the way that they have. Or, that's the number one thing. They play the way that they have. Yeah, it's going to be hard to beat a team like Kansas City. It's going to be hard to beat some of the teams you're going to face in the second half of your schedule. The offense has to play better. But also, I think we're also forgetting special teams. Hopefully on Sunday, there are no more shin drops with the punter where it's bouncing off of his ankle bone and going 20 yards, line drive, where it's like, oh my gosh, what happened here? The defense has been carrying the water. It's time for the offense to pick up the boats, as David Goggins would say, hey, we're going to carry the boats, son. The offense needs to figure out how to do that this week.
Yeah, and I guess like what it comes down to me with the offense is like if Marvin, like we're not sure if
Marvin's going to play.
Okay, he is going to play. So that's huge for them as well. But again, like, can we see Evan Ingram unleashed? If J.K. Dobbins does not play, that really concerns me.
Doesn't make you feel good.
No, I mean, he's just been so dynamic and so vital to the success, the little bit of success the Broncos have had on offense the last handful of weeks as well. And so I worry about no J.K. Dobbins, Sean Payton going pass heavy, Bo Nix still being a little flustered. And it also just feels like the Broncos are due for a loss, again, going based off what I was talking about with the win streak. So I want to be wrong, Nick, but I know what Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City's offense can do, and I'm not sure if the Broncos offense can match that.
Listen, I can understand why you're feeling that way. And for those Broncos fans who refuse to look at things for what they are, I get their side too, because they want this team to be successful because they've experienced, years and years of the team not being successful. So they're willing to cheer for almost anything and then see no evil, hear no evil, the whole nine when it comes to this team. But we have to be realistic about what it is that we are seeing, because we're not seeing this offense move the ball at a consistent rate, and that is problematic. And even if it doesn't show up with this Kansas City Chiefs team, it can show up with remaining games down the stretch. And if the Broncos want to host a home playoff game, they want to advance in the playoffs, they're going to need to show that they can do on a consistent basis what they haven't done all season long, and that's score points. And it's got to be this type of philosophy, guys. They have to, for once this season, against a quality team, tell the defense, man, you guys sit down. We got it, right? Yes. We got it. Sean has to say, well, thank you, Vance Joseph, for getting us to this point, but I'll take it from here. Sort of like Dan Campbell taking over the play calling, and with the Detroit Lions, the offense now has to take control. This is your opportunity to showcase yourself against a team and an organization that you have historically lost against for the past 8 or 9 years.
It's been a long time. And that's why. Yeah, I mean, this is why it is like, and again, they'll play again on Christmas, right? So that's probably going to be the biggest game of the year when we get there. But I think that this game will just tell the tale of what this Broncos team could be this season, because, you have the opportunity to extend the streak to 8, really bury Kansas City in the division and the AFC West as a whole if you can win this game, versus if Kansas City wins this game, they have new life, new optimism, all that kind of stuff as well. And you know what? I would not mind the heated exchange from Bo Nix and Sean Payton on the sideline this weekend. I want to see Bo go out there and assert himself.
Fired up.
Get fired up, get locked in, because sometimes it looks like a little bit of the deer in the headlights there the last few weeks with Bo Nix. We need to see that passion come back from him this weekend against Kansas City. But all right, before we get out of here, Cody, I'll go to you then. Nick, any closing thoughts you want to get off your chest?
Well, let's go through. Let's do a 3-man prediction here. Nilo,
Okay.
you start. I'll go, and then we'll close out with Nick.
Well, I already gave you mine. I think the Broncos are losing this game.
Okay, well, give us the context in which you think how they're going to lose.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the Broncos
close?
offense. Yeah, I think it'll be close. I think this Broncos defense is good enough. I do think the line, again, I like to just use that for provoking the thought a little bit. I think the line's about right. I think this is a field goal game. Now, how poetic would it be if the Broncos won this game on a walk-off field goal with how the game in Kansas City played out last year? So I got the Broncos losing this game. I think it'll be close, like a 20-17 type of game. I hope I'm wrong. I hope Bo Nix and the offense lights it up. It's more about my lack of faith in the Broncos offense than it is my faith in Kansas City as a whole. So I'll go 2017 Denver loses.
All right. Well, I'm going to go. Denver's going to go to 8 straight games with a victory. They're going to find a way to get out here against Kansas City. And I think we're going to see a better performance from the offense.
Okay, I like it.
What do you got, Nick?
Any score predictions for us, Cody?
Score predictions
I'll
always
run around
tough for
from
me.
it.
I always feel like the score predictions are always the jinx in a sense. I think I think this one, okay, if I got to give a score prediction, I'm going to go with 17-13. Denver wins.
Low scoring. Okay.
That was interesting because I actually wrote down here on my piece of paper here 17-14 Denver Broncos. But I'm really willing to stretch that just a little to push it out to 21-20, and the Broncos edge it out. So I'm
3 touchdowns?
21-20. Because once again, the touchdowns can come by the defense themselves or the defense getting a Nick Bonito sack force fumble, putting the Broncos in ideal field position as though they've done all year long. Hence why I call them freaking MacGyver and setting the offense up. So,
okay.
20 Broncos victory.
I like it. We've all got relatively low scoring, though, which I think feeds into this Broncos defense, Kansas City, the Broncos' inconsistencies on offense. Like I said, I know I'm the only one that picked the Broncos to lose. I want to be wrong. So I want to throw that out there for Broncos country. Let's see the Broncos go out there, win that game, prove me wrong, light the world on fire offensively, and away we go. But we shall see how the game plays out. But it's an exciting one, biggest game of the year. Broncos getting ready to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. For Cody Roark, for Nick Ferguson, I'm Aniello Piro. Really appreciate y'all tapping in with us. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button on your way out the door, and we'll talk to you guys on Sunday, hopefully after a Denver Broncos victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Talk to you guys then.